You know, people always like to think they have life figured out. They go through their routines, wake up, brush their teeth, commute, work, scroll through their phones, go home, rinse, repeat, and somehow convince themselves that this is what control looks like. And I want to tell you something that nobody really wants to hear, but it's the kind of truth that can shake you a little if you let it. Life is chaotic, messy, and it doesn't care about your plans. You think you're steering the ship, but most of the time, the ship is steering you. And you're just holding on, hoping it doesn't crash. That's the brutal truth. And the sooner you accept it, the sooner you can actually start living. We like to avoid this idea because it's uncomfortable. We're terrified of feeling small, of feeling like we're not in charge. But here's the thing, acknowledging the chaos doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. When you stop pretending that everything is neatly ordered, that everything will turn out exactly as you want it, you open the door to seeing life as it actually is. And the moment you see it, really see it, something interesting happens. You start noticing the things you actually have control over. You start noticing the moments of clarity, the small victories, the little slices of life that are actually yours if you pay attention. And they are beautiful, even in the middle of the mess. Most people go through life running from discomfort, trying to dodge failure, dodge embarrassment, dodge pain. But here's what they don't realize. Discomfort is the lens through which life reveals itself. You can't dodge it forever. And the sooner you face it, the sooner you can stop living in the shadow of fear. You think you're avoiding suffering by clinging to comfort, but all you're really doing is missing the chance to understand yourself, the chance to grow, the chance to feel alive. It's that simple. Life doesn't owe you comfort. Life owes you nothing. And once you stop expecting it to, you start seeing it for what it really is, and it's not all bad. And that's the strange part, isn't it? Life is brutal, but it's also full of moments that are profoundly simple, even beautiful. The kind of moments that sneak up on you when you're not looking. A conversation that makes you think differently. A quiet morning where the sunlight falls in just the right way. A memory that hits you with a warmth you didn't know you were missing. The truth is, these moments are everywhere, but we're so busy pretending we're in control, so busy trying to avoid the unpredictable, that we miss them. We miss them entirely, and then we wonder why life feels empty or unsatisfying. And I'll tell you another part of the truth that's even harder to swallow. No one really cares if you succeed or fail the way you think they should. People are too wrapped up in their own chaos to pay attention to your carefully plotted plans. And yet, we spend so much of our energy trying to manage their opinions, trying to perform perfectly in a world that doesn't even notice. It's exhausting, isn't it? You start chasing this illusion of perfection, of safety, of control. And in the process, you miss the messy, messy wonder of just being alive. The reality is that life is unpredictable, and it's going to throw things at you that you don't expect. People you love will disappoint you. People you rely on might fail you. Your body will betray you. Opportunities will vanish. And sometimes everything just collapses for reasons you can't understand. But in that collapse, there's clarity. In that collapse, there's a chance to see what matters and what doesn't. And if you let it, it can change how you see the world. It can change how you see yourself. You see, we are always waiting for life to get easier, for the perfect moment to act, for the right conditions to appear. But here's the kicker, the perfect moment doesn't exist. Life only exists in this messy, unpredictable, chaotic now. And the sooner you stop waiting for it to conform to your expectations, the sooner you can start living in it fully. You don't need a plan for everything. You don't need to understand it all. You just need to start paying attention to what is, not what should be. And that's the first piece of the story that will change how you see life. Accepting the brutal truth. Accepting that life is messy, that you are not in control, that suffering is inevitable, and that people mostly don't care what you're doing. Accepting it doesn't make you weak. It makes you alert. It makes you alive. It makes you ready to actually notice the moments that are yours to seize. Once you see life this way, the fear and frustration start to fade because you're not fighting an imaginary war against reality. You're in it fully, and the clarity that comes from that is liberating. And when you start seeing things this clearly, when you start embracing the chaos instead of resisting it, you realize something else. This awareness isn't just about understanding life, it's about learning how to navigate it differently. You know, After you start seeing life as it really is, the chaos, the unpredictability, the little tiny truths that nobody wants to face, you start noticing moments that hit you like a lightning bolt. Moments that make you stop in your tracks and realize, oh, I've been looking at everything wrong. There's always one of those moments, one of those days, one of those small slices of time that changes how you see everything. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be life-shattering or headline news. Sometimes it's just a simple realization, but it smacks you upside the head like you've been blind your whole life. I remember this one moment, a day that seemed completely ordinary at first. I was walking down the street, just trying to get from point A to point B, and I saw this interaction between two people, a man holding the hand of an old woman, helping her cross the street. And I thought, that's it. That's all it takes. That tiny act of care, that brief connection, made me realize that the things we chase, the things we stress over, the money, the status, perfect image, we've been looking in the wrong place the whole time. Life isn't about avoiding the chaos or controlling everything. It's about noticing the small moments that actually matter and being awake enough to appreciate them. And it hits you because for so long, we're asleep. We're sleepwalking through life, distracted by everything that seems urgent but is actually meaningless. We convince ourselves that success is measured by achievement, that happiness is measured by possessions or recognition, but it's none of that. The moment that changes everything is the moment you realize you've been measuring life with the wrong ruler. You've been trying to weigh joy with stress, value with pain, and it just doesn't work. And once you see that, even a little, it opens up this incredible perspective. That's what makes life interesting, the unpredictability of those moments. You can't plan them, you can't script them, you can't schedule them in a calendar. They come out of nowhere, like a truth knocking on your door that you didn't even realize was there. And when it hits, it makes you question everything you thought you knew. You realize how much of your life has been wasted on pretending, on worrying about things that ultimately have no power over you. And the more moments like that you notice, the more you start to see patterns, not in the way of controlling life, but in the way of understanding it. And it's not just about noticing moments, it's about understanding their weight. That quiet realization that life is made up of these tiny, seemingly insignificant pieces, and that each one carries more meaning than any grand plan ever could. You start thinking about all the times you were too busy, too distracted, too preoccupied to see someone smile, or to respond to someone's kindness, or even to feel your own heartbeat and notice that you're alive. Those are the moments that count. And once you recognize that, you start holding your attention differently. You start valuing differently. And suddenly the world looks less like a series of obstacles and more like a collection of invitations, inviting you to be present, to feel, to engage. And here's the kicker. Those moments also expose how fragile everything really is. It's not meant to scare you. It's meant to awaken you. The same street, the same sunlight, the same conversation you had yesterday could vanish tomorrow. And knowing that, feeling that, makes every little choice, every small interaction, every honest thought feel heavier, richer, alive. You start to understand that it's not the grand gestures or the epic milestones that shape your life. It's the way you experience the ordinary moments, the way you respond when life quietly nudges you. And you can't force it. You can't control the moment, you can't manufacture the realization. All you can do is be present enough, alert enough, and humble enough to recognize it when it comes. And when it does come, it's like a window opens inside your mind, and suddenly the way you've been looking at the world, the way you've been judging yourself, the way you've been chasing the wrong things falls away just for a second. Just enough to see clearly, and that clarity changes everything. The key is noticing it, paying attention, letting life hit you instead of constantly pushing it away. That moment, no matter how small or quiet, can redirect your whole path. It can make you rethink how you spend your time, how you value people, how you approach challenges. It can make you see that the chaos we were afraid of, the unpredictability we hated, is actually the very thing that brings these transformative moments into our lives. Without it, we'd be blind. Without it, we'd never know. And that's why these moments are so powerful. They aren't flashy, they aren't loud, they don't come with a warning or a schedule. They arrive quietly, sometimes painfully, sometimes beautifully. And if you're awake, if you're paying attention, they change how you see the world forever. They're the little cracks in the day where truth slips in, where understanding seeps through, and where life whispers its secrets if you just listen. So the lesson here is simple, but it's easy to miss. Always be alert for the moments that make you stop, the moments that shift your perspective, the moments that remind you why you're here. And when you notice them, don't push them away. Let them hit you. Let them sink in. Let them change you, even just a little. Because it's in those moments that life quietly teaches you what actually matters. And that's the kind of realization that reshapes everything. And here's where it gets tricky. Because once you've started noticing these life-changing moments, once you've started seeing the cracks where truth slips in, you begin to realize something else, something uncomfortable, something most people spend their whole lives trying to ignore. We don't control as much as we think we do. We like to tell ourselves stories about being in charge, about steering the ship, but that's mostly an illusion. You plan, you strategize, you try to make everything perfect, and life laughs quietly behind your back. It's not cruel, it's just indifferent. It doesn't follow your rules, and it sure as hell doesn't care about your deadlines or expectations. And at first, that feels terrifying. It feels like being on a stage without a script, like standing in the middle of a street that's always moving beneath your feet. You start to panic because you realize, wait a minute, what if I'm not in control at all? And here's the punchline. The truth that most people never fully accept. You were never really in control. Not completely, not ever. And the sooner you stop pretending that you are, the sooner you can stop exhausting yourself chasing illusions. Because think about it, how much energy do we waste trying to manage everything around us? We try to control people's opinions, outcomes, circumstances, even our own emotions. We convince ourselves that if we can just arrange things perfectly, if we can just predict the next move, we'll be safe, we'll be happy, we'll finally feel okay. But life isn't a machine, and we aren't mechanics. You can't tighten the screws and oil the gears enough to stop the unpredictability. The harder you try to force it, the more it resists, the more it slips away, and the more miserable you feel. And yet, here's the weird paradox. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean surrendering to chaos like a victim. It means seeing clearly what's actually yours to influence and what's not. It means putting your energy into the things that actually matter, your attention, your presence, your choices, and letting the rest unfold however it unfolds. That's where freedom comes from. That's where clarity comes from. That's where you start to see life for what it really is, instead of the filtered version you've been imagining. Once you start thinking this way, you notice how much of your stress and frustration has been self-imposed. You start seeing patterns in your own behavior, the way you cling to outcomes, the way you worry about things that ultimately have no impact on your happiness, the way you let fear of the unknown dictate your decisions, and the realization hits you like a shock. All that anxiety, all that effort, it was unnecessary. Life doesn't demand it. Life doesn't punish you for not controlling it. In fact, life rewards presence, attentiveness, and a willingness to adapt. And here's the thing, when you let go of the illusion of control, something remarkable happens. You stop resisting the unpredictable, and suddenly the unpredictable doesn't feel so threatening. You start to see opportunity in chaos, insight in confusion, meaning in randomness. You start noticing how events you once dreaded turned out to be exactly what you needed, how failures taught you more than success ever could, how moments you thought were insignificant ended up shaping your understanding of the world. You begin to see the invisible threads connecting everything, and it makes you more patient, more grounded, more aware. Because the truth is, you can't orchestrate life like a performance. You can't control other people, you can't control circumstances, and you certainly can't control time. But you can control how you respond. You can control your attention, your awareness, your willingness to learn, your openness to change. And that's powerful because it shifts the focus from futile attempts to control everything to meaningful actions that actually shape your experience. You start prioritizing what matters, you start investing in what endures, and you stop wasting energy on what doesn't. And once you understand that, you start noticing patterns you never saw before. You notice how people who cling too tightly to control often suffer the most, while those who accept life's unpredictability, who acknowledge that chaos is part of the deal, find clarity, calm, even joy in situations others would panic over. You notice how much of your own tension comes from trying to force life into a mold it doesn't fit, and how much relief comes when you finally release it. That's the lesson here. Control is a mirage, but perspective is real. Perspective allows you to navigate uncertainty with insight rather than fear. Perspective allows you to live fully, even when life refuses to behave. And the best part is, this doesn't require a special skill or a sudden epiphany. It requires attention. It requires honesty. It requires a willingness to stop pretending you can direct everything and start engaging with what is. It requires accepting that life is messy, unpredictable, and fleeting, and letting that realization guide your choices instead of paralyzing you. Because once you see control for what it really is, once you stop obsessing over outcomes, you start noticing the beauty in the flow, the lessons in the setbacks, and the power in simply being present. So the lesson in all of this is straightforward. The illusion of control has been holding you back, and the sooner you see it for what it is, the sooner you can stop struggling and start living. Life isn't about dominating it. It's about participating fully in it, moment by moment, choice by choice. And when you start practicing that, when you start shifting your energy from control to awareness, from resistance to acceptance, you start moving toward a life that feels less like a battle and more like an adventure. And here's the part that most people resist even thinking about. Pain is part of the deal. Life throws it at everyone, no exceptions. You try to ignore it, you try to numb it, you try to pretend it doesn't exist, but it's always there, lurking, waiting for a moment when you least expect it to remind you that you're alive. And here's the thing, pain is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. You get to decide how you respond. You get to decide whether you let it crush you or whether you let it teach you something, even if it's a lesson wrapped in fire. Most people spend so much of their time avoiding discomfort that they miss the clarity it offers. Pain is like a spotlight shining on the cracks in our lives, on the things we've ignored, on the ways we've been fooling ourselves. It exposes the illusions, the pretense, the masks we wear. And when you face it directly, when you look it square in the eye, something interesting happens. You start to see patterns. You start to understand causes. You start to recognize the small ways you've been contributing to your own misery. And that's when you start to realize that pain isn't just punishment, it's guidance. And guidance is only useful if you're willing to pay attention. If you keep running, if you keep distracting yourself, if you keep trying to escape, it doesn't help. But if you stop, if you breathe, if you notice what's happening, the pain becomes a kind of teacher. And it's a brutal teacher, make no mistake about that, but it's honest. It doesn't sugarcoat, it doesn't lie, it doesn't offer you shortcuts, it just presents the truth. And the truth has a way of cutting through all the nonsense we build around ourselves. And here's where it gets transformative. Once you start paying attention, once you start listening to what pain is telling you, you can even find moments of light in it. Not in the way people expect, not in some naive sense that everything is fine, but in the sense that you realize, okay, this is real, this matters, I am alive, I can respond, I can learn. And that realization has weight, it has substance, it has a kind of strange, quiet joy embedded in it, the joy of clarity, the joy of awareness, the joy of not pretending anymore. Pain also has a way of teaching humility. It reminds you that you're not invincible, that you're not in control of everything, that you are human and fragile and temporary. And if you accept that, if you stop pretending you're above it, life starts to feel lighter. Because you're no longer carrying the pretense of perfection, the weight of expectation, the illusion that you need to have it all together. You can just be, and that alone is enough. That alone opens space for growth, for reflection, for connection. And the beauty of all this is that when you stop resisting, when you stop fighting the inevitable, pain doesn't just teach, it transforms. It changes the way you see challenges, the way you see setbacks, the way you see relationships. It gives context to your experiences, depth to your understanding, and clarity to your choices. You begin to see the threads that connect everything, how a disappointment leads to a revelation, how a failure sets the stage for insight, how loss uncovers what you truly value. And here's the key. You can't skip this process. You can't shortcut it. You can't pretend it away. Life will keep delivering these lessons. Sometimes gently, sometimes violently, until you finally learn to pay attention. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you start finding the balance between vulnerability and strength, between struggle and understanding. You realize that every setback, every heartbreak, every moment of fear or shame carries within it the seed of transformation. You just have to notice it. Once you start noticing, you start integrating. You start taking the raw material of your experiences, your pain, your mistakes, your regrets, and turning it into insight, into wisdom, into a clearer vision of yourself and the world. And that's when life stops feeling like a series of random misfortunes and starts feeling like a path, not a perfect path, not a controlled path, but a real path. A path you can navigate because you're awake, because you're aware, because you've learned how to face pain instead of hiding from it. And finally, the most important realization of all is that this process, facing the uncomfortable, paying attention, integrating the lessons, doesn't make life painless. It doesn't erase the struggle. What it does do is make life bearable in a profound way. It gives you armor made not of denial, but of awareness. It gives you a framework for responding rather than reacting, for understanding rather than blaming, for living fully rather than surviving. You start seeing that life's challenges are not enemies to defeat, but teachers to learn from, and that shift in perspective changes everything. So the takeaway is this: pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And if you're willing to face it, to notice it, to integrate it, to let it teach you instead of break you, life becomes richer, deeper, and infinitely more meaningful. The key is attention, presence, and acceptance. The key is letting life hit you and letting it teach you and letting it transform you.